Hello everyone, this is Mr.MonsterConnoisseur, and this is the second upload of this week, and Undo in Special Education Part 7. Without further ado, let's begin. Special Education Part 7 by user 970 underscore. I stared at the Lulu. The pain begins to make its way into her nervous system after the shock that must have taken her the first few seconds. No, fuck, and she sputtered like a whimpering dog lying on the ground, her hands grasping for the knife lodged inside her. I stared at her eyes, wide in shock and desperation, quickly switching their focus from me to the knife and back again. Charlie, please help, she stammered, with a bit more energy than before. But I couldn't. All I could do was stare at the woman. As the life began to slowly drain from her eyes, I began to wonder what it would be like if they found her. Would they assume it's my fault? Would they charge him with murder, even though it was technically an accident? I found myself beginning to be overcome by this sense of worry. This was perfectly normal, as I often worried for my own happiness, but now I couldn't really tell who the sense of worry was being directed towards. Charlie, I began to wince. I wanted to look away, but couldn't. Why the fuck is this happening? She's the one who did this to herself. Charlie, please. Just please shut the fuck up and go to the hospital. Can't you fucking teleport? Charlie! I stared at my dad as he was calling my name, realizing that Rock was about to give. I told him it was pointless, that I had dropped a pen that was still in my pocket from school yesterday. Buddy saw me lose my grip, and that was enough justification for him to die like this. I heard a sliding sound, and saw him fall with a look in his face that could sear itself into my mind. And then he hit the ground. That was it. From totally alive to totally dead within 4 seconds. I always wondered what it would be like if he was still alive for a few moments. What would he say to me, knowing I was the last person he would get to talk to? The lone wolf of the family himself. Would he have called for help? Or would he have realized it was already too late, and his time was up? Would he have poured his heart out to me, apologizing for all the things we never got to do together? Or would he finally breathe a sigh of relief as his eyes closed for the last time, his soul now free and awaiting its reunion with Mom's? I never realized how much I thought about him. I mean, the lock was there, but almost every therapy session reminded me of him, and my mother mentions him quite frequently. But I never thought about his death until now. It was the key, and she knew it. Stared at the woman who did this to me. Started all this. God knows I wouldn't have made it this far without her. Charlie, please! I just wanted to run. To go somewhere where I can be free. Where I can be at peace with myself. I don't care if it doesn't truly exist. The journey is more important than whatever destination I could have found. It would have been a disappointment, just like everything else. Everything except. Alright, fuck this. She's probably too injured to do much teleporting anyways. Crawled over to her body, taking my shirt off before grasping the handle of the bloodied knife. I could see her beginning to pass out. This is gonna hurt like hell, I managed, and quickly pulled the knife off, as if it were a band-aid. She cried a bloody murder as I did so. Can't blame her. It made a quiet slicing sound and blood began to pour out incredibly quickly. I took my shirt, stretched it across her stomach, covering the wound as he lifted her up and tied it around her back. The only thing that I could do was apply some pressure, though I had hoped Knot would take care of that for me. Holy fuck it! She moaned and winced in pain, staring at me as she grasped my arm with a bloodied hand. Why the fuck did you do this? Why did you even come after me in the first place? Why couldn't you just let me get fucked by someone who didn't? Why the fuck did you do this? Why the fuck did you even come back after me in the first place? Why couldn't you let me just get fucked by someone who wouldn't even bother with the disguise? Why didn't you just me the moment you saw me? I managed to verbalize well, trying to make sure the wound was being tended to. My feelings conflicting between repulsion and emotional submission. She sputtered a quick laugh before answering. Why are you helping me if I caused you all this pain? I see you still hate answering questions with actual answers, I responded with a hint of smugness in a microcosm of fear and frustration. She frowned before answering. Do you really think all of us are like that? Just fuck wild animals? I looked at her with an exasperated glance, replying, no, otherwise I wouldn't be single. And you guys clearly seem to make the entire goddamn world revolve around it. And to answer your other question, probably has to do with the fact that A, you'll die out here, and I'll probably get blamed for it. B, I'll probably get taken advantage by someone else anyways. And C, you're the only one I've met who actually seems to give a damn about what I say. She looked down, seemingly pondering my answer before stating, the cashier was in on it. I wanted to make sure you had food and water before I revealed myself. But it turns out we didn't need it. The secretary was closer than I thought. As for why I did this in the first place, I could have just do not give a shit. But that wouldn't have made you happy in the end. I grunted in dissatisfaction. I appreciate the fact that you actually listened to me. But since when did you give a single shit about my happiness? Since I found out about you, she replied. It's monster nature. Then why in the hell did you have to open Pandora's fucking box? 'Cause you bitch. No. I cried, losing my temper for a moment, causing her to weep. I was just fucking fine before you found me. No, you weren't, she contested. You were miserable. I sighed, having calmed down mostly. She was right. I don't know what kind of thing you were looking for when you chose to run away, but I guarantee it probably wasn't much more than a fantasy. A fantasy blinded by a hatred of our kind. I involuntarily eased pressure on her wound as I brought my head up to face her, no longer having to glance repeatedly. You think I hate you people? I asked coldly. Her mannerisms changed noticeably with this question, and she nodded with uncertainty. I sighed, turning my attention back to her injury. I never hated monsters. I just couldn't stand them. Because I couldn't understand them. I wanted so badly to just wake up one morning and learn to be happy with them. And I hated myself for it. I hated not being able to understand why the few friends I had called me lucky when I got sent to exposure therapy all those years ago. But that adult that told me that I was lucky when I told her about what that teacher did to me. Months before my father's death, I wanted to disappear. Both for my sake and the sake of everyone else. But I couldn't die and become some spirit's problem. And have them become my problem. I just felt like I was born in the wrong era my whole life. Really? Stared at me, nodding as she continued to endure the pain. And I could sense that her hold on her emotions was beginning to loosen, just as mine did. We both just sat in silence for what felt like hours, though it probably wasn't more than 10 minutes before Riley began to break down, breathing heavily and screaming, I gotta fucking kill that woman, before sobbing. I almost rolled my eyes at this, but I couldn't help but once again realize that feeling blissful catharsis once more as she did so. I finally released the pressure on her stab mark, before remembering that I need to disinfect it as well. I considered my options, given that I was just outside the city, and I revealed that my safest bet was, and I realized what my safest bet was. As we began to walk, I began to inform her about what I was planning. She nodded accordingly. I felt disgusted, more with myself and my current actions than with her. But what the hell ever. I've expressed my emotions plenty of times. This shouldn't be much different. I grabbed her arms and pulled her upward through the woods. Tracking slowly towards civilization, I was exhausted, both physically from running and mentally for reasons I shouldn't need to explain. Similar to before we reached the town, we remained deep enough that any passing vehicle or pedestrian along the roads next to the woods wouldn't be able to spot us. Alternative therapy should have been banned sooner, she muttered as we were walking. But there weren't enough uses of it to prove how harmful it was, especially to young boys in post-tragedy therapy. Not as if most dominant-centric areas like the city's been paying mind to the ban anyways. I didn't respond. I'll finally make sure they do, she continued. Her confrontational attitude gave me a small reminder as the reason I ran from people like her in the first place. Motherfucker. Alright. We got as close as I figured. I got as close as I figured we could before emerging from the woods out into the suburbs proper, walking along the sidewalks, hoping to not gain the attention of too many onlookers. We caught a few stink eyes, but I underestimated how willing to keep to themselves the monsters were. I mean, a sizable percentage of them were either married or committed to a harem, but still, I guess my so-called luck streak continues. It's probably around 3 to 4 p.m. to this point. The hues of the sun illuminating the extended neighborhood in the golden hues, once again reminding those who bear witness that the days were getting shorter and colder. I began to feel my eyelids get heavy, but I continued onward. Riley nearly tripped over me as I approached my destination, my heart beginning to quicken as I did so. I knew my fate was sealed at this point, and that the woman I was holding might be the kind person my whole damn family had been waiting for me to find. But I found myself thinking about any possible escape less than normal, and I really wasn't willing to grasp why exactly that was. We finally approached the old and familiar building. Practically dragged Riley through the entrance, slowly turning the doorknob. Realizing it was unlocked, I opened the door gently, stepping inside and shuffling Riley in after me, exhausted. Saw the familiar figure of my mother frozen in the adjacent room. I took your advice, I said, catching a brief glimpse of one of my siblings before my legs felt weak. Then everything went black soon after. Alright, that was Special Education Part 7. Going to be doing Part 8 tomorrow. Alright, goodbye.